Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video on the channel, guys. So what we are going to be doing today, guys, in this video is we're actually going to be focusing on my team, Preston North End. So this video may not be everyone's cup of tea who does normally watch my YouTube videos, but what I thought would be a good idea to do today, guys, is I'm going to be doing a full season review for my club, Preston North End. So there are quite a lot of topics which I'd like to bring up in this video, and we're going to be discussing them all today. So we're going to be going over our transfer windows we've had, our dips of form we've had this season, some of our key players that we've had this season, and there's quite a lot I'd like to talk over in this video, really. So like I said, this may not be everyone's cup of tea for who does normally watch my videos, but I must say that soon, in the next week or so, I will be doing a full championship review of every team's season in the championship. But for today's video, I thought I would focus on my team, Preston North End, as I've got a bit I'd like to say about our season, really. And I'd love to get some of your guys' opinions on what you guys have thought of Preston's season this year. I'll also leave some polls in the top corner that you guys can go ahead and vote on for issues which I'd like to know your guys' opinion on. So in the end, Preston did finish in 11th place with 62 points, which coincidentally was exactly the same amount of points which we did finish on last season. However, this season we did score 19 more goals than that time, but we did also concede 18 more goals than last season. So the big question really on everyone's lips is, have we actually improved this season? So let's discuss that. So throughout this video, we're going to be going in order of the season, basically. So we're going to be taking it right back to the start of the season for the start of the video, guys. So it's no secret, you know, we had a really bad start to the season. We actually lost all of our games in August, and basically my opinion on what I think actually went on at the start of the season is we went into this season not prepared, in my opinion. And I mean, a prime example of that is, let's just take a look at the starting 11 we went with for our first game of the season against Reading. For that game, here was our starting 11 of players we had. So for that game, which you of course went on to lose, we had Lindegaard, Grimshaw, Clark, Huntington, Wright, Cunningham, Gallagher, Pringle, Johnson, Beckford and Garner. Now, out of that starting 11 amount of players, I'd probably only say that 4 of them at max would get into our current squad if everyone was fit. So in my opinion, the 4 players at max who would still get into our squad there are Tom Clark, Paul Huntington, Greg Cunningham and Paul Gallagher. Now, that's 7 players there who, in my opinion, probably weren't good enough going into this season, and I think there are quite a few factors going into that as to why we actually came into this season a bit unprepared, but we've got to learn from this, in my opinion, because last season actually we had a lot of parallels actually between the 2 seasons going on, and the way we started last season as well really wasn't great. So I think that this season Grayson surely has to learn from his mistakes, and it is going to be absolutely imperative that first of all we have a good pre-season. I think that is massively important for us, but above all else it is crucial that we get our business done early in the transfer window, because if we are going to have a serious push for promotion next season, which I think with our current squad it is a possibility with a few more additions, but if we are going to seriously do that, we cannot afford to give the other team such a huge head start really by having such a bad first month in the championship. So continuing to look over that squad which actually started on the first day of the season. So first of all we had Lindegaard in net, and it's been no secret really, Lindegaard has been a flop of a signing. The way it's worked out was actually very disappointing really. I saw a bit of potential in Lindegaard from last season when we did have him on loan, but obviously with that things just didn't work out. And I think that first of all the thing that shows us more than anything coming into this season unprepared was the right back issue we actually had going into the season. Of course, Callum Woods picked up an injury in pre-season which he's still yet to actually fully recover from, but we were then forced to of course play Liam Grimshaw at right back at the start of the season, and I mean that really didn't suit us, and it sort of off-balanced the rest of our team, but that obviously wasn't the only issue. And Grimshaw still I'm quite unsure about. I'm not sure what I actually make of Liam Grimshaw. Of course, as well as that, our 2 starting up front for this game were Jermaine Beckford and Joe Garner. Now, a fantastic pairing in League One. Of course, in the Championship, it just didn't really seem to work out between these 2. And of course, now these 2 have actually both left the club, which I'm a little bit sad to see, but overall I think it is the right thing for the club. And of course, at the start of the season, I think a little bit of our unpreparedness was actually down to the departure of Joe Garner. Of course, no one was expecting us to lose Joe Garner, you know, going into the start of the season. I'm sure Simon Grayson had Garner written in his plans for the rest of the season, but with Rangers coming in with that bid with money which I suppose we couldn't have really turned down, At the time, I was actually very sad to lose Joe Garner. However, seeing how the team has evolved ever since we have lost Joe Garner, I think in hindsight, it probably was the right decision to let him move on. I think with the way that Jordan Hugill has come into that position, he's been a bit of a controversial player this season. We'll get to talking to Hugill in just a minute, but I think with the way that Hugill's been able to mature into that spot, and with some of the players which we've had going around Hugill this season, I think we are a better team now for losing Joe Garner. And then the bad start to the season just really seemed to continue. Of course, like I said, we actually lost our first month of games, really. We lost all of our games in August. However, the turning point, in my opinion, of our season was that cup game that we had against Bournemouth. Now, prior to this, we actually lost against Brentford away by 5-0, and that really did put a lot of pressure on Simon Grayson. You know, back in the day, there was a lot of fans calling for Simon Grayson's head at this point. You know, we hadn't started the season well. We were in the relegation zone. Going forward, we didn't really seem to be going anywhere with anything, and I think that's another thing which has to be said about us going into this season unprepared. Of course, we didn't have Aidan McGeady for the first month. You know, we only signed him on deadline day. Imagine the season that we would have had if we didn't get that Aidan McGeady deal done. I mean, that really does make you think. But it was the Bournemouth game, in my opinion, which was the turning point. Of course, we managed to beat them by 3-2. Simon Mackinock getting a hat-trick in that one, and there were a lot of players in that team who were sort of making their first few appearances for Preston. I know that Chris Maxwell came into the team in that game. Simon Mackinock showed what he could do. Callum Robinson really hadn't been used that much beforehand. Ben Pearson as well really started to show what he could do around about that time, and ever since then we seem to breathe confidence, and really we seem to have that attacking mindset installed into us after this Bournemouth game. And after that Bournemouth game, we actually went ahead and were unbeaten in our next 6 matches, and that saw us climb out of the relegation zone and start pushing up for promotion. And it does have to be said, for quite a majority of this season, we were actually knocking on the door for the playoffs, and I don't think that it was. At one point, it really was in touching distance, and it was a little bit gutting that in the end we of course did fall short of it. And I thought that the defining moment really with us missing out on the top 6 was the game that we had against Fulham away. I mean, that came at a crucial time really. Us and Fulham were sort of about, I think Fulham were like 2 points ahead of us at that point. Had we gone on to win that game against Fulham, things could have been so different for us, but of course we did go on to lose that game. I mean, deservedly so. Fulham were the better side in that game, but overall it was a disappointing one in the end. And then that did sort of prove as a catalyst for us having this bad finish to the season. Of course, there are quite a few other factors to take into consideration, in my opinion. Of course, I mean, we had a lot of injuries going in to the end of the season. We, of course, had quite a few suspensions as well, which really didn't help us out. But overall, I do think that the bad finish probably was due to the lack of motivation when we couldn't realistically make the playoffs anymore. But in terms of the question, have we actually improved this season? If we look at it from last season, of course, we finished on the same amount of points. Yes, in my opinion, we have definitely improved this season, and I'll give you a couple of reasons for that. Of course, last season, people were crying out at Grayson for us to start playing some more expansive attacking football. I mean, the football we played last season, it wasn't pretty to watch, but it was effective. You know, we were quite defensive, hard to break down. We played 5 at the back for pretty much the majority of that season, actually, and we would grind out a lot of results. However, this season, we've seen a complete contrast to that, really. At the back, we have been a little bit more leaky, and we'll get to a couple of reasons why I think that is in just a minute. But going forward, we have been electric at times this season, and I'd be interested to know, actually, what do you guys think has been our best performance this season? I mean, some of the standout games, in my opinion, have been our 3-0 win against Cardiff, our 2-0 win against Villa was a personal favourite of mine. That game, in the first half of that Villa game, we were just on another level in that game. It was ridiculous. Our 3-2 win against Blackburn, 4-2 against Brentford, 5-0 against Bristol City. That was a great game. And even our game against Arsenal as well, which of course we then went on to lose 2-1, but the first half of that Arsenal game was something else. So in terms of our defence seeming to deteriorate a little bit, I think a lot of that does have to contribute to the way we play. You know, we're a lot more expansive now. We are creating a lot more chances, but in turn, of course, that is going to mean that we are a lot more exposed at the back. However, I do see a little bit maybe being down to a personnel change, of course. I mean, last season we had Jordan Pickford in net for the first half of the season, and the amount of points which Pickford was able to gain for us last season is probably around about on par with how many McGeady's been able to gain us this season. So I think that's one thing that has to be looked into. Of course, as well, in the January transfer window, we did lose Bailey Wright, who was, you know, a key player in our back four. However, since then, I actually don't think we've really missed Bailey Wright too much. I think the way Paul Huntington has been able to step into the team has been very impressive since then. So in terms of my player of the season, I would say that my player of the season would have to go to Aiden McGeady. I think overall he has been absolutely fantastic for us. However, that is followed very closely, in my opinion, by Ben Pearson. I thought Ben Pearson this season was ridiculously good. The amount of space he's able to cover, I think when you've got a midfield consisting of other attacking players, you know, when you've got other players in there like maybe Paul Gallagher, Daniel Johnson going forward, players like that, it's imperative to have a player like Ben Pearson sitting behind them and showing a bit of passion and a bit of desire and leadership really from that midfield spot. And the age that this guy is doing it all at, he's got a serious future ahead of him. In my opinion, Jordan Hugill's also had an excellent season for us. Chris Maxwell has had a good season for us in my opinion, and Tom Clark as well. I thought at the start of the season, Tom Clark was actually getting quite a few critics, but overall I think he's been gone on to prove them wrong, and Tom Clark's had a good season in my opinion. So I quickly brushed over it there, but Jordan Hugill has definitely been a player who has divided fans' opinions throughout the majority of this season. Is Hugill good enough? All of this stuff like that. In my opinion, yes, I do think he is good enough. I think the progression that which Hugill has showed year on year since we have signed him, he's going in the right direction. And if he can continue that upward trend of improving year upon year, I think in the next, you know, 1 or 2 seasons, he's going to be a great player for us. And I think that this season, he has been very effective for us in this league. I mean, this is the guy who has finished as our top scorer. He's finished with 13 goals this season and 2 assists. Should Hugill have had more goals this season? Yes, he should have had more goals this season. You know, he did miss quite a few chances, but I mean, you look at it at the very top level. Zlatan Ibrahimovic for Manchester United. How many massive opportunities has he blown for them? I'm not for 1 second comparing Jordan Hugill and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but people do miss chances, and I think that people do need to give Hugill a little bit of slack, considering going into the start of the season, Hugill wasn't thinking to himself, I'm going to be the #1 striker this season. You know, going into this season, he was probably the 4th choice striker we had. I mean, ahead of him at the start of the season, we probably had Jermaine Beckford, Joe Garner. I'd even argue Owen Doyle was ahead of Hugill in the pecking order at the start of the season. So, considering where he's come from probably our 4th choice striker to our top goal scorer this season, I think he's been great for us this year. So, going on to talking over some of our signings from the transfer window that we have had this season. So, I've decided to split these signings up into what have been, in my opinion, bad signings, mixed signings, and good signings. So, first of all, we'll start out with the bad signings. First of all, we have Ben Pringle. Probably the most disappointing player on this list, actually, because of all the potential he came into Preston with. We've been linked with Ben Pringle throughout, I'd say the last 2 or 3 transfer windows. Preston had been linked with Ben Pringle. We finally managed to get him in through the door, and really he just hasn't been able to suit our style of play. And with other players playing in his position, like Aiden McGeady, Daryl Horgan, Tom Barcusen, and Callum Robinson, he's just not been able to get into the team, really. And Andres Lindegaard, we don't really need to talk about, just a bad signing overall. Owen Doyle as well, I mean, his highlight of the season coming with a fist fight against Jermaine Beckford, definitely a bad signing. Grayson decided to take a gamble on him, that of course didn't pay off in the end, and maybe a little bit harsh, but Tyus Browning, in my opinion, he has been a bad signing. Of course, he did get that injury which held him back, but ever since he has come back from that, I've not really been convinced by it. And then to the signings which I think have been quite mixed in my opinion. First of all, we do have Tommy Spur. I think as a squad player, he's a decent player in the championship level. However, say if Cunningham was to go ahead and be injured for the entirety of the season, would I be happy for Tommy Spur to be our first choice left back for an entire season? Probably not. I think he has been quite hit and miss this season. He has had some good games this season, but equally, I think he has been caught out quite a few times. And the same, in my opinion, then goes for Marnik Vermeil. Really a player which I'm really not sure about Vermeil, in my opinion, because at times this season, we have actually seen him play some very nice football. You know, going forward, I think he is a very good player, and I think he does fit into that right wing-back role quite well, actually. But as an out-and-out right-back, I'm not really too sure about him. Simon Mackinock as well. I thought that Simon Mackinock, actually, I didn't think he was a bad signing for us, but I know he's got a lot of stick off fellow Preston fans, Simon Mackinock. But in my opinion, he did his job. He was a good target man, in my opinion, and he chips in with quite a few important goals for us. And then to the signings who, in my opinion, have been good signings this season. So we have Chris Maxwell, a very good signing, in my opinion. Do we need to sign a goalkeeper going into next season? Yes, I think we do. I I don't know if it's a bit of complacency sneaking into Maxwell's games, but I've seen a little bit of a dip in his performances really. Ever since he fully nailed down that #1 shirt, I thought he wasn't as great when Lindegaard was really pushing him for that shirt. Andy Boyle, I think, with time will turn into a good signing. Daryl Horgan as well. We've not really seen much of Daryl Horgan this season, and I think that a large majority of that will be down to he's played a lot of football this season. I mean, Daryl Horgan hasn't really had a break. He's played the full season in the Irish League, and then he jumped straight over to Preston North End, so I think he'll be having a well-deserved break coming up in the summer. Tom Barkhuizen as well, what an impact this guy had, and he's actually been playing with a hernia, so imagine when Tom Barkhuizen is fit, he could seriously be a massive player for us in the upcoming season. Callum Robinson as well, an excellent signing, our second top goal scorer this season with 11 goals. He's been a little bit hit and miss this season, but overall I'd say it's been a good one for him. Alex Baptiste as well, I think has been a very good player for us. Would I like us to sign Baptiste in the summer? Yeah, I would. I think he'd be a good addition. And then last but not least, we don't really need to say much about this guy, Aiden McGeady. What a player he has been for us this season. Without a doubt, in my opinion, he has been our player of the season. He's just been magical. The way he's just able to take the mick out of some defenders is just absolutely sublime at times. And without a doubt, he is the best player I've seen play for Preston throughout my time watching him. I can't think of anyone really who's been on his level. When McGeady is on his game, he is just ridiculously good, and I think that if we can somehow manage to secure his signature in the summer, we really could be going places then. So in terms of the players who I think we should be looking to sell in the transfer window, Ben Pringle, I think I don't really see him having a future at Preston North End. Similarly as well, Owen Doyle, I just don't see him having a future at Preston. And I'm also going to throw out Daniel Johnson. I mean, he's such a frustrating player in my opinion, because he does have the potential to be a good championship player, but he's just not shown that consistency. Over the past 2 seasons, which we've had Johnson in the championship for, I'm just not seeing that consistency. He's the sort of player who will have 1 excellent game and then 5 terrible games, and considering we want to be moving on as a squad and pushing for the playoffs, I'm not sure DJ cuts it anymore. So looking ahead to next season, who are the positions which I think we do need to strengthen? I think we without a doubt do need to sign a goalkeeper who is going to be maybe not replacing Maxwell, but pushing Maxwell at least for that #1 spot. We need a player who is at least on par with Chris Maxwell in the goalkeeping department, in my opinion. Alex Baptiste as well. I would like to see Baptiste come into the squad. I think he's quite useful. He's been a good signing for us. He can play that right-back role very well, and equally to that, he can play in centre-back very comfortably. And of course, with Tom Clark being out, a centre-back is going to be massive for us in the transfer window. I also think we're going to need to bring in a central midfielder as well. I mean, with Paul Gallagher aging, I absolutely love Paul Gallagher, but he's aging now. He's getting to that older age where he's not going to be able to play every game of a season next year. So I think we do need to sign a centre mid. And with me being quite unconvinced by DJ as well, John Welsh being struck with quite a few injuries recently, a centre mid to play alongside Pearson is going to be required in the summer. And 2 strikers, in my opinion, are the bare minimum which we're going to need to be bringing in up front. I think probably the thing we need most of all in the transfer window is going to be strikers, of course. Jermaine Beckford's left, and Mackinock's loans run out. Stevie May, it's yet to be seen whether he's going to cut it in this league or not. And Jordan Hugill, I like him, but I think he does need someone to be playing up front with. And then without a shadow of a doubt, Aiden McGeady needs to sign for Preston North End. The fee currently being rumoured around McGeady is 2.5 million. Would you guys pay 2.5 million for Aiden McGeady? Let me know down below. I mean, already he is 31 years old, so realistically we're probably only going to get 2, at a push 3 more good seasons from McGeady. So is it worth it for 2.5 million? In my opinion, if we are going to invest money into other areas of the pitch, such as invest money into a striker and get Aiden McGeady into the club, I think that will give us a serious chance of getting the playoffs next season. So with that, I think it would be worth it. So to wrap up the video, guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what has been, in my opinion, our strongest 11 this season compared to our strongest 11 last season. And then I want you guys to go ahead and say if we have improved as a squad. So our strongest 11 this season did look like this, in my opinion. So we had Pickford, Woods, Clark, Bailey Wright, Greg Cunningham, Adam Reach, Paul Gallagher, Daniel Johnson, Chris Humphrey, Owen Doyle, and Joe Garner. So overall, that was the team which pretty much played the majority of games for us last season. However, compared to this season, I think we've had a massive improvement in the players we've now got. I mean, looking over that squad now, the quality of our team overall has risen by pretty much a sizable margin in my opinion. I mean, now we have Chris Maxwell, Alex Baptiste, Tom Clark, Paul Huntington, Greg Cunningham, Callum Robinson, Paul Gallagher, Ben Pearson, Aidan McGeady, Tom Barkhusen and Jordan Hugill. And I think that with more additions in the summer, this squad really could be going places. And so that's going to wrap it up for this season review, guys. I brought up quite a few talking points which I'll be very interested to know your guys' opinions on. Of course, I would like to talk for more really, but I do want to keep this video down to a reasonable size. But like I said, guys, if you would actually like to see more Preston North End content coming to the channel for pretty much next season really, make sure you do leave a like on this video. It is always massively appreciated. So thank you very much to everyone who has stuck around to the end of the video. I do massively appreciate it. And like I said, I'd love to know what you guys have thought of our season in the comments down below. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.